Hi, this is Steve Cochran, and I could not be happier that you found your way to Live from My Office, the podcast. Podcasting. Oh, yeah. You don't have one yet? You will. Every American has to. It's the law. It's Radio 2020. It's what radio eventually had to become, and that's where we are. So I'm really looking forward to this, and we got a great episode today. And in just a few minutes, you're going to hear a conversation I had with Ron Magers, one of the all-time great television anchors, and by the way, a great guy as well. You know, you'd want to know that. And he gets to talk about stuff with me that he was never able to talk about before because of the constraints of the job, including the state of the media, some politics, his own addiction issues, which he's always been really inspirational about. I'm really excited about you hearing this conversation and hearing Ron Magers in a way you never have before. But I do want to make one note. We did this interview. I taped with Ron Magers just a couple of days before we found out about the passing of Jerry Taft. Ron was a good friend of his, but if you're wondering why it's not discussed in this, because it was literally just a couple of days before. I think Channel 7 has remembered him well. I can tell you I didn't know Jerry all that well, but I knew him well enough to know he was a great guy. People loved him. He was a heck of a golfer and fun to hang out with. So listen, God bless Jerry Taft and his family. And condolences on the loss to everybody who knew him really well, as did our friend Ron Magers. In the meantime, let's go through a couple of things here. Where do you get the podcast? Well, you know, because you've already found it. But tell your friends. It's Apple Podcast. It's Spotify. It's Google Podcasts. And it's my website, CochranShow.com. Don't forget to subscribe. That's really important. Doesn't cost you anything. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button in whatever form it is on one of those platforms. And we're going to be good to go, and you won't miss an episode. Now, maybe there's somebody in your life that doesn't understand podcasts. That's a lot of folks. And maybe they need help, and they don't know how to ask for it. Maybe they won't reach out. Maybe you'll have to see that in their eyes. Well, if somebody needs help, show them how to download the app. Show them how to get to the podcast. Don't laugh at them. Don't point. Just look at them and say, hey, Dad, do you need help? Now, this show, I guarantee you, will always be timely, topical, relevant, smart, and funny. So that's a pretty good prescription for what may be ailing you. And we're going to have great guests as we do today. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to tell you about a special guest we have on Friday, which is pretty cool as well. So a lot of the old friends from the radio show, great guests, me and my funny friends, opinions from me, rantings by me. God, what else do you need? In a podcast. It's Live from My Office, and when we come back, you'll hear a very cool conversation I had with a great television anchor in Chicago, media legend, Ron Magers. That's next. This is Live from My Office, presented by Team Hochberg and my friend David Hochberg. We thank you for the partnership and really looking forward to it. Speaking of Hochberg, you know, my sister just refied her house for the second time with Team Hochberg. You guys all know John DeCoss. John DeCoss was having some issues and had some debt issues. He basically was a drifter going from town to town, just stumbling into saloons. But he reached out to Hochberg, and he was able to get him out of debt, enhance his credit, refinance his previous home, helped him secure the financing on a new home, and John has never been happier. And how is he paying it forward? Well, he's mowing David's lawn, but he's also telling people about Team Hochberg. You want to know more, and you should, because I'm telling you, rates are so low now, it's ridiculous. If there was some good news to come out of this crazy year we're in, this is probably near the top of the list. He's got a passion for helping listeners. He helped me with our loan when we finished off this house that I'm currently broadcasting from. I don't know if you heard, I'm live from my office. He did my daughter's loan on her first house as well. Point being, I trust him, and that's why I recommend David Hochberg and Team Hochberg. Here's what you do. You pick up the phone. You call 855-56-DAVID. Website is easy to remember, too. It's 56david.com. Refinance to pay off your debt. Reverse mortgage information right there as well. Help you purchase a new home. I trust him. He's David Hochberg. It's Team Hochberg. There's nobody better when it comes to your home. This is Live from My Office, and, you know, every boy has a dream. And my friend Ron Magers has agreed to appear here on the new podcast. Remember, you can subscribe. your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify. We're cranking up those numbers to make me look good because that's how show business works. Ron Magers, how are you?
I am very, very good. I'm surviving COVID-19. I'm loving retirement, and I have no complaints.
Let me talk about retirement for a second because I don't know if you know who I used to be, but I have struggled, and that's not why I'm doing the podcast. I'm doing the podcast because I like talking. But I have struggled with finding a routine of not having a routine. Was it anything like that for you for the first year or two?
I have always, I'm really fortunate in that I have always done nothing pretty well. And I really mean that almost quite literally. Part of it is, doing the job I did, I would start out in the morning and I'd read 3 or 4 newspapers and I'd do a kind of a trap line on the internet in the modern era. And I'm, from the very moment I'm having breakfast doing that, I'm thinking about the news that day.
Sure.
How does this story move forward? Is there a local angle? How do we do this story tonight?
Show prep.
All of that stuff. Yeah. And then the prep went on basically all day in various forms. You're not consumed by it, but it's always in the back of your mind. So when I had downtime, I really enjoyed kind of doing nothing. I mean, clicking around the TV and reading a book and doing that kind of stuff. And I've got other things that have kept me busy. I got involved with thoroughbred horses many years ago, and we became actually pretty good sized breeders. We've ended up in various partnerships with 11 or 12 brood mares. So we've got 11 or 12 babies every year, and we raise those, and then we sell them as yearlings. And that kept me reasonably busy. And I still play poker. I love playing poker. I can't play it in a poker room anymore, but I play it online with friends.
So the transition, not a big deal.
No, it really wasn't. I really, and part of it is also I've been a recovering alcoholic for 42 years, trying to live by the parameters of one day at a time. And that has helped me tremendously in all aspects of my life.
Kind of balances everything out, right? If you're working the 12 steps.
Yeah. I just take today for what it is, and it'll present me with enough problems and enough opportunities and enough moments of joy that I can just enjoy today. I think one of the mistakes retired people tend to make is, I'm looking at the rest of my life and there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
You know what? There will be stuff to do today. Stuff will come up, and you can make some stuff come up once you start to get a little creative about it.
So part of the thrill for me has been having ADD my entire life. I'm never bored. So it's just, again, it's finding the routine.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like I've just kind of fallen into it, and I really like it. And I haven't had not a moment of regret. But I also, part of it for me also is, and so few people in our business get this opportunity. I knew that I had worked long enough to know that I had worked long enough.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
It was a real blessing. And it also, there was that sense of fulfillment. I'm not leaving any regret behind. There's nothing I didn't do. There's nothing more I want to do. I had a full career in that business, and thank you very much. I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and a lot of people ask me, and I'm sure you get the same question, like there's a big story here, a big story there. There's the dumpster fire in the White House. Do you miss talking about it? Don't you want to be a part of that story? There's so many platforms now where you can comment on this stuff and still do your own thing that don't involve going in and working for somebody who doesn't get you or the way you feel it ought to be done.
Yeah. The other thing is I now have practiced at becoming a news consumer separate from someone who needs to do something about it.
Okay.
So that I'm enjoying reading and watching a variety of sources and just kind of taking it all in and thinking about it and having those conversations with my friends. And I'm sad that I live in a time where I have literally lost a lifelong friend, a friend that goes back to high school over Donald Trump. A group of high school friends, 5 of us.
And you can't talk to them anymore.
Well, in a group, we would have an email exchange and have for years and years. And we would see each other every year or two. Wonderful, lifelong friends. And one day a conversation started about politics, which we normally didn't get into, and it started in a strange way. A football coach had left Washington State, where we all grew up, and had gone to, I don't know, Alabama or Mississippi or somewhere. And one of the guys said, maybe his politics will fit better there than they would in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
The friend who is a diehard Trumper actually sent a message that said, if we're going to disrespect our president like that, I can't be part of this group.
Wow.
And we sent a note back saying, hey, we don't normally talk about politics. I didn't take that as offensive. I don't happen to be someone who would vote for Donald Trump, but you have every right to be. Something like that. And we got a note back that just said, I don't want anything to do with this.
And he's out.
And he's out. He's gone. I haven't heard from him in a couple of years.
It's pretty remarkable. A lifetime
friend. A lifelong friend. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm stunned by it. I'm just stunned by it.
Well, especially amongst men too. And this is not sexist in the least, but there are a way that men relate where you can remain friends for life, talk every 3 or 4 years if it comes to that, and you pick up right where you left off. But normally when a grown man is upset at a friend, another grown man, you have it out, and an hour or two or a day or two later, you come back and you talk it out and you work it out. So it's the type of pain that I think you don't have a unique experience in, but because I know others have gone through it. But I understand why you're stunned. It amazes me.
Let me tell you a quick story about the difference between men and women. My wife was doing one of her master's degrees several years ago, and my task at the time was to write papers for her before she became much more proficient in typing and word processing and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. But in the course of it, she was writing a paper about a woman named Carol Gilligan, who wrote a book called In a Different Voice many, many years ago. And Carol Gilligan was pointing out differences between boys and girls and how little research had been done on girls at that time. And this could be 30 years ago now. And she was looking at the differences in research and how little research had been done on girls. And she did some research. And one of the interesting findings was a group of boys are given a game to play. A group of girls are given a game to play. The boys given the game will follow the rules of the game and will play the game until there's a winner,
mm-hmm.
even if there's conflict along the way.
Sure.
The girls given the same game will play the game, and if there's conflict along the way, will end the game and preserve their relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was fascinating.
That tells the story. I mean, that's a great elucidation of what men do and what women do. You know, you and I, you used to be a golfer, and I know you gave it up because you're smarter than I am. But but I still play.
I retired undefeated.
Yes, you did. But I still play and still love it. But we laugh about this on the golf course occasionally because guys on a golf course, good friends, are just brutal to each other. They'll say the most hideous things to each other. And we always laugh and you go, I wonder what a foursome of women would do in this exact circumstance. And here's the difference. It'd be, oh, Shirley, no. You'll get him next time. No, it's a better shot. No, you'll be fine.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I played once with my wife and two other women many, many years ago. And at the turn, we all picked up a little sandwich or something. And then we're sitting near the 10th tee where there's a group going off before us and we're all eating a little something. And one of them says, you know what I really enjoy about golf? I said, no, what's that? She says, the picnic aspect. We're eating outdoors.
Yeah, men are from Mars, aren't they? All right, now I want to get back to the news business here in a second. But before we do that, I saw a note about you because I actually do prepare for things. How do I not know this? As a kid, you lived in Alaska?
Yeah, I went to kindergarten through the fourth grade in Alaska. My dad was a bomber instructor in World War II.
Okay.
And I was born at the San Bernardino, California Army Air Corps base. And in those days, there was no Air Force. It was the Army Air Corps.
Yeah, my dad was in.
Oh yeah, and then after the war, my dad went up to Alaska for a small outfit called Cordova Airlines in Cordova, Alaska, and he was an accountant slash pilot for Cordova Airlines, and he flew people on little fishing trips and charters and pick up miners, and they flew all around Alaska, and he was in 2 crashes, survived them both.
Wow.
And in Cordova, where we lived at that time, there was a road that went 13 miles out of town and then came right back. And
right.
you got to Cordova by plane or by boat. And it was a great growing up as a kid. I mean, I got my first .22 rifle when I was 8 years old, because you need to learn how to use a rifle and how it works and all of that kind of stuff. And we lived, Cordova's a little teeny town. I don't know. I'm going to guess it was 1,000 people at the time. And we lived literally right up against the forest. And bears would come and ravage our garbage cans and scratch on the side of the house.
Yep.
It was
part of life. You don't see that in Chicago that often.
No. Fishing and hunting and all of that stuff. And I really loved it as a kid.
So was it sad to leave?
I don't think so. Because when we left, we ended up in Ellensburg, Washington, where my dad's mother lived. So I had a lot of family there.
Mm-hmm.
That I had way more family there than I did in Alaska. And as a kid in the 4th grade, you hated leaving your friends, but right away you meet new people and around family, and I don't remember any trauma about it.
Yeah, kids adjust. And speaking of family, before I jump too fast here, how's yours in the midst of this goofy life we're living?
Everybody's good. We're really, really fortunate in that I have 3 daughters, and all of them and their husband they've kept their jobs. They're going to be okay. Everybody's healthy. Good. 4 grandkids, all good. All wondering about what school's going to be like. 1 continuing college, 1 an incoming freshman, not knowing what's going to happen. 2 in high school and not knowing what's going to happen. It's a really strange time.
It's the strangest year, period. I mean, certainly there's been great tragedies that you and I have seen and lived through. And sir, I consider this year a great tragedy with 140,000 people plus who have lost their lives. But it's a slow motion tragedy, which makes the year even more bizarre. Yeah,
and our reactions to it. My brother Paul, who you know from Minneapolis, lives now in Palm Springs. He said hello, by the way, and nice. he just took a road trip from Palm Springs up to Seattle to see a bunch of friends he went to college with, and then driving from Seattle over to Eastern Washington to see the family that we have there. And they rented a big SUV. They're wearing masks, keeping the windows down, blah, 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 doing all the social distancing they can. But he said, I just had it. I just have to get out and do something. And he said along the way, he thought the hotels were being very, very careful, stayed in 2 hotels, thought they were very clean, very careful. They all had recommendations on where he could eat that would be outside and would be okay. And he just said, I got to do it. I just got to get out of here.
I completely get it. And I have tried to impart to people, not just because I have friends in the hotel business, but that the best way to go out of business right now is to not be clean and to have someone get COVID at your place, whether it's a restaurant or a business or whatever. So I think it's actually quite a safe time to go and do that. And by the way, kids, the rates are good.
Yeah, they are.
Get them while you can. All right. So you guys as a family, you end up where after Alaska? Are you in the Northwest?
Washington State.
Okay.
All of us ended going to high school and college and all that stuff in Washington State. And most of my family is still there. I have one brother. I have a brother in Seattle, a sister in Central Washington in a town called Yakima, a brother in Portland, Oregon, and Paul is in Palm Springs. So it was all West Coast.
And you, I know, worked in Portland, you worked in San Francisco, but I never understood how you got from San Francisco to Minneapolis.
It was very strange. there used to be a consultant. I guess the company's still around, the Frank Magid company.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he had Frank and I had an interesting and confrontational relationship through all the years.
I'll bet. I'll bet.
Yeah. But he represented a company in Minneapolis, and we were going through conflict in San Francisco at the time. That we had new management, and they wanted to take the station in a different direction. And several people had left, and I was about to be one of them.
Okay.
And I got a call from this consulting company, Frank Magid, said, "I understand you're not happy in San Francisco." I said, "Well, I'm probably going to be moving at some point. I'll be looking for something." And they said, "Well, we've got an interesting thing we want you to consider in Minneapolis." And I said, "No, I'm not going to Minneapolis." They said, "Well, this is interesting in that they're looking for someone who's smart enough to be news director and the anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And your name keeps coming up in people we talk to around the country." And I said, "Well, I might be interested in that."
Right.
And he said, "Okay, why don't you come to town and come to Minneapolis and we'll talk to you." And that was a Sunday morning that they actually called me, of all days.
Right.
And I said, "You know what? I got some days due me. I'm going to take those days off work this week. Check United Airlines and see when the next nonstop is from San Francisco to Minneapolis, at least 2 hours from now, and I'll be on that plane. And I'll find a place to stay, and I'll come in and talk to you on Monday if you can be there with the owner." He said, "Yeah." So we did, and we made a deal, and I was news director there, going up against a legacy station, WCCO.
Yep.
And Dave Moore was the anchor there, and a fine guy. But they had reached the point that I thought they were resting on their laurels a little bit. I spent a couple days watching them on the air and looking at what KSTP was doing, and I decided to take the job. And I took the job, and about 18 months later, we were number one and on the move, and it became a nice success story.
Yeah, and you know this. A few years later, I got to Minneapolis. I was the same as you. I was leaving a job, and somebody said, "You need to come to Minneapolis." And it was a guy I came up with who's a very big deal now in radio and television. But at the time, he was just my idiot program director. And he said, "You got to come to Minnesota." Well, Minnesota to me was reruns of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and it still looked really cold. And I didn't want any part of it. And I went in, and I know you'll understand this as a Minneapolis reference. I went in, the general manager of the place picks me up, and he said, "We're going to meet the owner." I said, "Where?" And he said, "At the State Fairgrounds."
I love it.
At the State Fairgrounds, which, of course, is this iconic cultural thing in the Twin Cities. Look, the bottom line is this. It is phenomenal. I love the Twin Cities. I actually still miss the Twin Cities. It's been 25 years. But it is really one of the great cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, in the country.
Corporate recruiters will tell you how they have two problems with the Twin Cities. One is getting someone to move there, and the other is getting them to move away.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Once you get there, and one of the things that struck me about it when I did just a little bit of research about it was there was this survey done, and at that time, the Twin Cities had the highest level of affordable culture delivered to the residents. Is that
right?
If you were interested in culture, whether it was live theater or museums or all of that kind of stuff, you put it all together. And I think it was that, there's that interesting Scandinavian influence in the Twin Cities that produces the sort of politician I kind of always wanted to vote for, which was socially liberal and fiscally conservative.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to find some of those now?
Wouldn't it? We've lost the middle, and I always used to think of myself as being in the middle. I voted for both Republicans and Democrats along the way. Probably more Democrats than Republicans, but I voted for Republicans on the national level and local level, and I always thought of myself as being kind of a centrist, and it seems like nobody cares about me anymore.
Listen, I'm with you right in the middle, and I think the country will get there based on how terrible both sides have reacted on the far right and the far left. But before we leave the Twin Cities, you have the distinction of winning in major markets. And there's a lot of fine, talented anchors who go around the country or talented talk shows go around the country, and they're really good, but for whatever reason, they just don't win. You won there, you came here, and you won here. And I think most people will remember this if you're in Chicago listening to this. I believe you and Carol Marin took the last stand for journalism that I can put my finger on, pure journalism over the Jerry Springer incident. Am I forgetting one or two?
Wow. It's no. There are people who have stood up for causes around the country. The Springer thing was a moment of insanity. And what I say about it is, we had a general manager who apparently, over a few too many drinks with Jerry Springer one night, those two decided that Jerry Springer should be a social commentator in our newscast at 10 o'clock at night. An idea so absurd on the face of it that it made it real easy to be against it. The problem was that being against it meant we both might lose our jobs.
Right.
And that got to be a little serious. But Carol and I both took that stand, and I think it would have been much more difficult for either one of us individually. But to be able to be with someone like Carol, who I respected and admired and loved, and who would reinforce my opinions, made the whole thing so much easier for me.
It was a really big deal if you were in Chicago at the time and you remember it. But the reason it ties so well into this discussion today and about today is the damage that's been done about fake news. This horrible two-word phrase that Donald Trump has thrown out and made a part of the lexicon of America. And we collectively as media have done such a terrible job defending ourselves over it that it has put the media in a position where it's never been less trusted. I think it goes to science being less trusted and skepticism about everything. Are you concerned about where we are when it comes to television news?
Yeah, but I think I in a strange way, I guess you can call it credit or blame. It does go at the feet of Donald Trump.
Sure. It's
been tried before by politicians. I mean, Nixon and Agnew tried to do the same thing many, many years ago when, Agnew's famous phrase was the news media, we were the nattering nabobs of negativism.
Right, say that 5 times.
And we didn't pay attention to the, quote, silent majority was when that first came up, was in Nixon and Agnew.
Yep.
And Nixon had an actual list of enemies, most of whom were in the media. And, his list of enemies would fill a hard drive now. And I think Donald Trump has found a way, going back to the New York lawyer Roy Cohn, who was a mean, nasty, evil man and a friend of Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump took lessons from Roy Cohn.
Oh, absolutely. He was his mentor.
Yes. And what he does is he says things. It's a well-known psychological fact that if you say something over and over again, even if it's a lie, even if it's patently untrue, if you say it over and over again, a significant number of people will come to accept it. Just believe that's okay. And Donald Trump does that really, really well. In fact, there's, the Washington Post fact checker, if you go online, is fascinating. And they just wrote a book that contains 16,000 falsehoods, misleading claims, and flat-out lies, is the way they describe it. And there is attribution with every single one about why they are wrong. There's no mistaking this. It's not fake news. It's what Donald Trump does. It's part of it's something from inside of him, wherever it comes from. He can't take criticism, and he is willing to bend facts to his will every day.
And because of
several times a day,
100%, and because of his ability to stay the course in the psychotic way he thinks about things, people talk about, his strategy. There's no strategy. Look, I've known this guy from afar since the 80s. I've interviewed him a million times, spent some time with him on the golf course against my will. He is the same blowhard he was in the 80s, but now he has the power of being the most powerful man on the planet. When people say you have no respect for the office of the president, much like your friend did, you don't respect the office, I always tell them the same thing. I'll always respect the office of the president, But the person who occupies it has to earn the respect of Americans, and he hasn't even tried.
The morning after he was elected, I don't do Facebook anymore. I think my account is still active, but I don't look at it. And we were sort of required to at work, and I tried to do it for a while, did it for a little while. But the morning after Donald Trump was elected, on Facebook, I actually wrote a few sentences that said, we have a new president. Let's try to honor the office and see how he does. That was my attitude in the beginning of this. And he has failed by every standard that I can come up with. So I didn't go into this opposed to the office or not willing to honor the office. I desperately wanted him to live up to the office.
Yeah, for the greater good of all of us.
And he failed.
And he continues to fail, and the threat of what he can do because of the power he does have gets bigger every day, and the more desperate he gets, the larger it becomes as well.
And here's the interesting and scary part to me, is that, in my view, the major parties have produced two flawed candidates. Donald Trump, who I believe is incapable of holding the office. He should not be there and needs to be removed. That is my view.
I agree.
You then have to vote for Joe Biden. And let's be brutally honest about this. In 1988, Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race for plagiarism. And he's always been, quote, the king of the gaffes. He makes mistakes. He has sometimes misappropriated words in an effort to aggrandize himself. He has sometimes, over and over again through the course of his career. This goes back to Joe Biden as a young man. This is not something new. He has always been that way. But what I do say about it is, I can't find anything in those records of gaffes that were mean-spirited or intended to hurt someone else. So, am I happy about the character issues of Joe Biden? No, I'm not happy about it. He has some character issues. That's no question. There's no question about that. If you're going to vote for him, you have to forgive some of those things. Donald Trump gives me too many things that are impossible to forgive.
Well, and to me, the thing about Biden as well is that I have no question in my mind that he understands the weight of the office, and he believes the office is about the American people, not about the guy sitting in the chair. Donald Trump gets up every morning, and his driving thought for the day is what is going to positively or negatively affect him. That's it. I have said this since day one. I'm telling you, there's nothing in life I'm more right about than this. That's who he is. And that difference is so stark, I really question how anybody could support him for a second term.
I understand. And when you get to the media and fake news, what I say about it is, if you were to watch only MSNBC, you're not getting the whole story. If you were to watch only Fox News, you're not getting the whole story.
Right.
It becomes incumbent more than ever on Americans who want to be informed to look at a variety of news sources and to work some of that stuff out for yourself. It's not easy to do. Americans are still. Is there a pill for that? They want the easy way out. They want to find information the easy way. One of the most frightening things to me is over the past many years, whenever I would meet a college professor, especially one in journalism, I would ask them, where do you think your students get information? How do they seek it out? And the answer has become in recent years, they mostly don't. That they're involved in social media and they believe if it's important enough, it will find them.
It's amazing.
That scares me.
No, 100%. It's the exact reversal of the way it has to work.
Yeah.
I always tell people, too, I said, find something you hear, see, or read in the news that you disagree with, and read it. Not just a headline. Actually read it. Read it and find out why they're making that point. Because when you were growing up, when I was growing up, and it was a newspaper-driven world, it was a 3-channel world, you were presented with the facts of the day within whatever constraints those various platforms had. You didn't have the ability to go off and wander to TikTok to see if anybody was doing anything funny or go here or go there. But people now, you know this, they stop on what they believe in and then they tell people about it.
Yeah, it is sad. And we are only reinforcing our own bias. And I used to, when I would do speeches, one of the things I would say is that, and I always liked the line because people would sort of take a deep breath when I would say, there is a bias in news. Now I've got their attention.
Sure.
And the bias is you. And here's the example I would use. That you see things through the lens of your own bias. And until you search beyond that, you will never be informed. Let me give you the simplest example. I go on the air tonight and say, Chicago School Board has reached agreement with the teachers union. There won't be a strike this year. Teachers will get a 2.5% raise over the next 5 years. And the deal's done. Pretty simple. I get off the news and I go into my office and I got a phone call waiting for me. I said, Ron, I'm on the school board. You know me. You missed the whole point of the story. Teachers wanted 5% a year. We slashed them down to 2.5%, which is reasonable. The school board really did its job, and you never said that. And the next call's from a teacher saying, Ron, we're getting 2.5%. We're not even going to keep pace with inflation. We're underpaid. We're undervalued.
Right.
You made no mention of that. You missed the whole point of the story. And I get a call from a homeowner who says, Ron, you never even mentioned that property taxes are going to go up $100 on an average home in Chicago just to pay for this damn deal. You never mentioned that. You missed the whole point of the story. So you see the story from your perspective and your bias. Once you see the story, you have an obligation to go on beyond whatever we have said and find out what else is important and how does that story fit for you. But we don't want to do that now. We want to have not only the news, in quotes, but more importantly, we want to have some talker in the evening tell us not only what the story should be, but how we should think about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Reflect my viewpoint and expand on it.
Yes, absolutely.
So where did it come from? Is this some sort of failure of our generation of parents, or is it a combination of maybe a little of that and social media and all the influences of the world now? When did we get to the point where we couldn't put ourselves in other people's shoes?
Well, I say a significant part of it comes from Fox News. It used to be, if you go back prior to Fox News, if you go back way back to the most distinguished conservative commentator of his time was William F. Buckley, and William F. Buckley was thought to be too smart.
Right.
He was way too intellectual.
Right.
He didn't put things in a way that affected the average person. And those who did were marginal right-wing, primarily radio commentators who were often on late at night and would rant and rave. They were the Rush Limbaugh of their time.
Yep.
Limbaugh came along and had the ability to communicate in a way that rang a bell for people. And then came Fox News, fair and balanced, their first phrase, created by Roger Ailes, who had a genius idea, put together something that would scare grandma and piss off grandpa. And it became a very successful format. And the problem was that fair and balanced during the day really started to become kind of a setup for the real money makers who were the talkers at night. That's where the bulk of the income came from, right. Those popular primetime shows. So Fox has somehow been able to ring the bell. It strikes a chord with people, whether they're disaffected or angry or scared or whatever else it might be. So that I don't think we're getting, in my view, a legitimate discussion of what should be the real conservative issues. What we're getting is a way to make you mad and make you scared.
Well, and the truth is Trump is nothing close to a conservative. He never has been.
No.
And what you and I talked about, and where I believe I live, and you believe you live in the middle, is where the majority of America is. Now, they all got to get up and vote. When we tape this, we're 104 days away from Election Day. This needs to be the largest turnout ever. And there needs to be everybody showing up and expressing their view. But yeah, I got a couple of grandkids now. It's the greatest thing ever, by the way. What an invention that whole thing is.
Isn't it?
And I want them to have a chance to screw up their country the way we've screwed up our country. They deserve a strong America. They deserve a great country, and I'm worried about it.
Yeah, what I worry about is I don't see a way to bring the country together from where we are presently.
Yeah,
we are so polarized. We are so you have to. It's no longer enough to believe in something and articulate that. You have to hate something.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be against something. You have to create an enemy. You have to make the other people bad people. You have to make the other people you don't want to listen to. You have to make the other people wrong in every aspect. That's the part that's really scary to me.
I also think, too, that the Democrats, the greatest mistake a Joe Biden presidency and a Senate sweep and a Democrat sweep of Congress and White House would be to say, okay, now it's our turn, bitch. It's revenge time, and go so far in the other direction, because then you make all of this worse. The Democrats have to be the ones, they don't have to eat it, but they have to be the ones to say, we're reaching out to you. We're gonna go down that middle path, and we're gonna do what's right for America, because the president is the president of the United States, not the president of his or her party.
Yeah, and it is so sad that so many politicians now. Part of it is the primary system is why so many politicians put party ahead of country. That most Republicans need to be very conservative to win a primary now, and too many Democrats need to be too liberal to win a primary now. And then they try to change who they are a little bit when they get to the general election. And what you end up with is someone you don't know when to believe.
And that's a great threat to the country going forward. So kind of makes you wonder why anyone would get in line and go, I'd like to be president. But
you should be disqualified as soon as you say that.
Exactly right. All right. Before you've been so good to give me all this time, but before you jump off the phone and take a more important call, a couple other things I wanted to mention. You talked about the ponies. You talked about the horse business. It sounds like you're still in it, maybe bigger than ever.
Well, no, I'm reducing my horse.
Oh, you are?
I don't want to run partnerships, and I don't want to do tax returns for everybody and all that stuff. So I am now going back to the way I got into it. I sold my share of all the broodmares last year. I have 7 or 8 yearlings to be sold in September in Lexington, Kentucky at Keeneland. And when I'm done with that, I will be down to owning 1 broodmare who will produce 1 baby a year. And 2 years after that baby is born, the baby will be ready to race. I will have a 2-year-old coming to the races this coming year, 2021, and I hope to have 1 horse to race, 1 new horse to race every year. So at the most, I could end up with 3 or 4 horses, maybe something like that. And they'll be just mine. I don't have to run partnerships. I don't have to explain things to people. Part of the partnership in the horse business is it's wonderful when you're successful. It's hard picking up that phone to say, that really expensive colt we've got? Well, he broke a leg and had to be put down.
Yeah.
But I've been in the business so long, I understand the downside that comes with it. But you put together a partnership and get some new people involved, and you have to make that phone call. And it's really, really hard to do. And I don't want to have to face that possibility anymore. So I'm back to doing it just for fun, just for me. And I've always treated the horses, even though it became a good-sized business, I've always treated, and I work hard enough at it and put in enough hours that I could treat it as an active business. I've always treated it as passively. I don't want to, I just want to, like any other investment. So for tax purposes, it was still passive for me,
sure,
even though I was so actively involved.
Can the sport survive?
I think it's really on the ragged edge. They're going to have a meet at Arlington, and it's going to be a greatly reduced meet. And the problem with that is it becomes so hard for the trainers to make a living at it. Arlington's purses are not very good compared to the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. We wanted to have slot machines at the racetrack, and Arlington hung around and fought hard for it for a long time. Arlington is now owned by Churchill Downs.
Right.
And Mr. Duchossois, thanks for everything he's done for the business all these years, is a stockholder in Churchill Downs, but he's not the majority. So Churchill Downs makes the decisions now. And then when we got to the point that Arlington had a chance to apply for slot machines this past year, they decided not to, partly because Churchill Downs now owns part of Rivers Casino right down the road.
Right. Why
do they want to compete against themselves? Sure. Yeah, so they don't want to. So as a result of not having slot machines to contribute to the purses that horses run for, as happens in so many other places around the country, we compete with 12 or 13 other jurisdictions who have much higher purse structures than we do. And purses are where the owners and the trainers and the grooms and the hot walkers all get paid. Well, Arlington is swimming uphill, and I don't know how long it can last, sadly, because there was a time when Arlington was the finest modern racing facility in America. And it's just so sad for me to see it slowly go downhill the way it has. And some other tracks have failed in recent years. There are still some great places to race. The state of the industry is best summarized by the foal crop, the number of thoroughbred babies born every year.
Okay.
20 years ago, there were probably 45,000 foals every year. I think this year there might be 20 or 22,000, something like 50% of what there was 20 years ago. And, a certain number of those horses are never going to make it to the racetrack. A certain number of those horses are never going to win a race. So as you look around the country, when you're betting on horses, you'd like to have a bigger field. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 horses.
Sure.
But as you look around the country now, a lot of races are run with 5, 6, or 7 horses. Makes it much more difficult for you to make money as a bettor. Makes it a much less attractive betting proposition. It's that betting handle that contributes to purses. So we're in this vicious downward cycle, it looks like, and I don't know how we'll get out of it or what it's going to look like. My fear is thoroughbred racing is again going to become the sport of kings.
Yeah, and that would be unfortunate because that would also spell a different death for it. But it's not just the racetracks. And by the way, all salutes go to Mr. Duchossois and his family for all the jobs he provided and all he did for Arlington Heights and that beautiful facility. But it's not just that; it's farmers.
Absolutely. The thoroughbred industry, that part of the thoroughbred industry in Illinois, is pretty much gone. Mm-hmm. There are very, very few of the thoroughbred farms left in Illinois. Very few.
Well, what are you doing for fun that we maybe don't know? Are you still taking the boat out occasionally?
No, I pretty much got out of boating in recent years. I'm visiting Chicago technically. I'm a Florida resident now.
Okay.
So I'm in Florida about 7 months out of the year, but I kept my place in Chicago, and I'm here about 5 months. And in Florida, I belong to a boat club so that I can go use a boat when I want to, but I don't have to deal with owning a boat and taking care of it and doing all of that kind of stuff. Last year, I let the boat club go just because I hadn't really used it enough. But, when I'm in Florida, I've become the classic Floridian. There's a group of guys I play gin with a couple times a week.
Sure.
And I love that stuff. What I laugh about is, and I tell my wife, I said, one of these days you're going to find me out on the shuffleboard course.
And she said, yes, and I'll be with the gardener.
Yeah, that's right.
So listen, one thing before we wrap up, and I think it's really important because it's personal to both you and I. You've always been very honest about struggling with addiction and your fight for sobriety in so many years now. How many years for you?
We are talking together on Wednesday, July 22nd.
Yep.
As of this very day, I have been sober and drug-free 42 years.
God bless. And how about that for serendipity? That's very
cool.
How
about that? Well, and I still don't know how it happened. It's a gift that was given to me by others. I have followed the example of others in various groups that I attend, and I am so appreciative to have been offered this gift at a time when I could accept it.
Yeah, it's well put, and that's exactly right. We both have brothers who have struggled with the same condition. Speak for a second, if you can, about the genetic component of this, because in my case, my brother and I are adopted from different families. You and your brother Paul, my friend, have the same gene. What do people not understand about that?
Well, my wife is a therapist, and she says that there's a whole sweeping body of research. For example, it says more than 50% of the daughters of alcoholics marry alcoholics, which would kind of make you think there's a behavioral aspect.
Sure.
There's something in that family structure that they maybe are not even aware that they're buying into, that they buy into in their own marriage or their next marriage. But it's also genetic. I can trace it back to my great-grandfather. I just love my great-grandmother literally came to the Kittitas Valley of Washington State in a covered wagon and lived to see jet planes in the 50s.
How about that?
And isn't that amazing? But I love, in that period of time, I love my great-grandfather's name. I have this visual image of it just when I say it. His name was Kid Lothrop.
Come on. Come on. That's tremendous.
Yeah, isn't it? Hey, kid.
Wow.
But my great aunts, the daughters of my great-grandmother, my great-grandmother threw him out when the kids were very young, which was extremely unusual in the late 1800s. And they threw him out. She threw him out because he was a drunk. She wanted nothing to do with him. And I didn't find this out until just a few years ago. But I can trace my dad struggled for a period of time with alcohol. And going back to my great-grandfather, I can see it in my family. I call chemical dependency, which is the umbrella term for alcohol and drug addiction. Any mood-altering chemical would do it to me. I call chemical dependency the disease of choice in my family. Mm-hmm. We're almost cancer-free in the whole family, but the other thing everywhere.
And I think it's important for people to hear from you. And I've said this many times from the codependent side. You can't love somebody hard enough to fix them, to have them quit drinking. You can't say, if you loved me, you wouldn't. It doesn't work that way. I worry about folks who are on the edge of this during this COVID period. There's people listening right now who need to be inspired, or who can be inspired to get the help they need. So what do you say to them?
Well, what I say is I was blinded by my disease. I thought I was the normal one and everybody else had a problem.
Right.
And believe me, I thought everybody else had a problem.
Right.
I was the only one who was okay. But I knew I had issues. Everybody who gets into recovery will tell you they had some gut instinct about it for a long time. They just couldn't let that part of them talk. They couldn't recognize it. Mm-hmm. They couldn't accept it. I was grateful in that my family had an intervention for me. And here's how sick you are when you're in it. My family had an intervention for me, and I got up and left with the professional person who was running the intervention and went to a treatment center because I was completely convinced all of them were wrong. I would go to the treatment center. I would be pronounced well. I would come home. I would divorce my wife, get the rest of those assholes out of my life, and I'd be a happy guy.
That's tremendous.
That's how sick I was.
That's how headstrong you were about that day, that moment. Wow.
Absolutely. I'm going to go there and prove to them they're wrong. And I got to the treatment center, and that night, I meet a few people. It went on a Sunday. Got there on Sunday night. People had dinner, just hanging out. my first great realization was, these are my people. I like all these people in here better than the people on the outside.
Right.
And the only thing we have in common is they're alcoholics and drug addicts. So maybe I better take a look at this.
Yeah, in the picture of which of these don't belong, it turns out you all belong.
Yeah, absolutely. These were my people, always had been. I mean, that was the first great revelation for me in recovery. But and there are, the other thing is, when you're in the process of addiction, you can always find somebody who's worse than you. And if you can see one person who's worse than you, you're okay. Looking over there, that's what the problem looks like. And I'm not like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm better than that. And there are all these twisted things that the disease does to your mind to keep you okay in your own head. Only when you get free and clear from it do you start to see what it's really like. But in terms of, you can't love somebody enough to make them quit. No, you're absolutely right. And in most cases, if you're a person dealing with someone else who you're reasonably sure has an issue, you need professional help. Trying to do it yourself is never going to work. If you can get some professional help from a therapist, a psychologist, there are people who do professional interventions. There are therapists who specialize in addiction issues. If you can get to one of them and start to get information, they can give you information on how to deal with it and how to take care of yourself, because the whole family gets sick.
Sure. And it sounds like what you're saying is take the first step.
Yeah.
So
you have to.
AA to me is a miracle, and it's just miraculous in the way it is able to save lives and get people on the path to save their lives, to put it maybe a little bit better. But is the secret of AA and the secret of the 12 steps, is it the accountability thing that you describe? Is that the key?
Well, what I say is I don't talk about what groups I'm in.
Sure.
And there is, everybody knows about it.
But I know you know the program.
And what it does, and I do know about the program. And what the program says is it's a program of attraction, not promotion. So AA never goes out and promotes itself.
Right.
What happens is, someone who gets into it maybe sets an example for another person. Right. I will occasionally get a call or have a friend approach me and say, hey, Ron, my husband, my boyfriend, my wife, my daughter, whatever it is, I think they're having issues. Would you go talk to them? And I say, no, I never go and talk to anybody else. If anybody else wants to talk, they have to come to me.
Right.
And I'll be happy to talk about it anytime to anybody. But I'm not out there looking for recruits or trying to cure somebody else's issues. They have to reach a point that they want to talk about it, and they come to me. Then I'll talk about it, and that's all I can promise you is I'll talk about it.
And
that's all I do.
That's the ultimate truth of the disease as well, and the cure.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say cure, because there is no cure. Of the working the cure, the day-to-day that goes on.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you don't need to hear this from me, but I'm proud of you. The same way I'm proud of my brother.
Thank you.
And I'm proud of your brother. We should say your brother's doing great, by the way.
He is.
And he's a fabulous guy, and I hate to admit this, he's funnier than I am, and that always makes me uncomfortable.
I know you guys had fun in Minneapolis.
Sure did. I'm glad he's happy and healthy. And for people that are aware of my brother Mickey, he truly is my hero, and he's doing just fabulously. He's got 17 years this year. So
isn't that great?
We'll wrap it up where we started, my friend. We're both blessed.
We are indeed, and I'm grateful.
I really appreciate all the time, and I know people like hearing from you. I like catching up with you, and I look forward to seeing you down the road soon. But thanks for being on Live from my office.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Ron Magers, a fabulous guy. This episode of the podcast, of course, will live at CochranShow.com and on your podcast platform. So if your friends missed out on it, get them to subscribe, and they can hear what you just heard. And again, I'm glad you're here on Live from my office. presented by Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Look, David Hochberg is loud. David Hochberg is emotional. David Hochberg has a passion for helping you and helping me. How do I know that? Because he did. We did a home equity loan on our home, and he did the home equity loan because I trust him. You know, that's the thing. All those years on the radio, I wasn't just talking about products. I was talking about products I spent money on or that I put faith in people on, and there's nobody I have more faith in than David Hochberg. I recommended that my daughter work with David Hochberg. He did. He got her mortgage for her first home, and she's thrilled and had a great experience. My sister just did her second home refi with David Hochberg. Look, he's good, and so is his team. And it's important that you know that you need somebody more knowledgeable, but also somebody that actually really cares about your outcome. And the local loan officer at the bank, I'm sure he's a swell guy, but that's not the same deal. Nor is Bob's House of Mortgages down the road. You need somebody that's the best in the business, and that's David Hochberg. Call him up at 855-56-DAVID. Go to 56david.com. You can refinance to pay off debt. You can do a reverse mortgage and find out all about reverse mortgages. Who are you going to call? Tom Selleck at his house? He's memorizing a script. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's bigger than I am, and he could probably still kill me with his bare hands, so don't tell him I said that. It's Team Hochberg, David Hochberg. I trust him. You can too. Whether you're purchasing a new home or just need help figuring out your money, you need Team Hochberg and David Hochberg. Let me give you the contact again. It's 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Well, just like that, we're out of time. Again, thanks to Ron Majors, and thanks to my producer, Ross Cochran. He's really the brains of the operation, as I always tell people. And thanks to you for listening, for finding it, for subscribing, for going to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts, and check out the website, cochranshow.com. There's always additional content there. It's new, and we're building it out. Could use a splash of color, but it's not bad right now. Now, before we go, I did want to mention one thing that I think is important, because I mentioned Ron Major's courage in talking about his addiction issues, as well as those of his brother. There's some important resources you can make a note of, because I also spoke about my brother. My brother is now sober. It'll be 17 years on New Year's Day. And if he can do it, you can do it. If Ron can do it, you can do it. You probably know somebody that's struggling. You know, it might be you. But there's a way to find treatment programs, and this is something the government's doing, and they're doing it pretty well. Here's the website, findtreatment.gov. Findtreatment.gov. I hope you'll remember that. It's not hard to remember, and you may have to use it or may feel a need to use it. It's part of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, because there's all sorts of resources within the website as well. The phone number, if you need to call them right now, do it. 800-662-4357. That's 800-662-4357. I promised you if you stuck around, I would tell you who Friday's guest is. Felicia Middlebrooks did the morning show at News Radio 780 WBBM for over 30 years and did it well. How do I know? Because she and her various partners beat me in the ratings almost every single time and drove me nuts in the process. But the cool thing about the conversation I had with Felicia is we'd never met. So you'll hear the first time we meet. We'll talk about radio, but we'll talk about Felicia and her amazing life story and her very cool dad. I can't wait for you to hear it, because this man was way ahead of his time. That's Friday right here on Live from My Office, presented by Team Hochberg. Have a great week, and thanks for listening.
Live from My Office is a product of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. Live from My Office is mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran, and hosted by Steve Cochran. Let us know what you think about a specific episode by leaving a comment wherever you're listening, or you can email questions and comments to thecochranshow@gmail.com. Steve is available for your corporate speaking gigs. You would love to host or MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.